the 2024 Republican National Convention. Join the conversation with Web Channel Politics in Color, powered by Bit Central, Globecast, Blacon Media, and Aza Group.
We are back. We are back. Politics in Color. Politicsincolor.com is where you are. We are joining you again live from the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm joined by my co-anchor Brian Jenkins, as well as Fabian Basabe, who's from the Florida House of Representatives, representing Miami-Dade County in Florida. And you know, there are a number of communities in this country, African American communities and other communities of color, that are finding themselves facing great peril at the hands of the counties in which they live. And Miami-Dade 1 is one of them. Fabian Basabe, explain.
So a couple of things that I walked in on. I was at a town hall meeting, and I walked in. We have a county mayor. It's a left-leaning district, and she had the auditorium filled, standing room only, and it was an African American community, predominantly lower income and Haitian. And I had a hard time getting in there. I mean, they didn't want the state rep there, and I'm the first Republican elected, so there's a little bit of animosity in our local politics. But I got in, I listened to what they had to say, and they were promising forgivable loans if they delivered their backyards. I kind of looked into it, and it's a program where people who are having trouble with inflation, paying their grocery bills, their property taxes, you know, if you don't pay your property taxes, that tax deed gets assigned and people buy it up and you could lose your home. Mm-hmm. So they're giving money to help you stay in your homes, but at the same time, you're signing something that lets you rent your backyards. And then there's a federal program where they have all these prefab houses that they're putting in there and they're renting it out. I don't know what's going in there. They could be putting illegal immigrants. They could be putting Section 8. They could be whatever. But the point is, people are not having ownership in the entirety for their homes.
Are the prefab homes like the Katrina trailers that
yeah.
they? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, and when you take advantage of a community, regardless race, color, state, just people who just might not, who is targeted are people who might not be sophisticated enough to read these legal documents, and lawyers are expensive, and people are struggling to make ends meet, and they're trusting that the people that are leading them through because of party lines are doing what's right by them, but they're losing their homes.
So how do you correct that? What do you do?
I actually, I asked if I could speak on the stage. They said, no, the menu's full. The agenda's full for the day. I said, I am the state rep of this district. You know what I did? I waited outside. All the politicians went through the back door. I waited out in the front till the crowds came out, and I just screamed at the top of my lungs, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your state representative. Hear me now. And I kind of went over this, and I said, listen, my office is available. If you can't find an attorney, you don't have someone helping you, call me. I don't care what district. I don't care what party you are. There's help available. I'll find you the help. But let's make sure you're not taken advantage of.
And so how has that played out? How has that played out for you? What kind of response have you received?
Well, when people see that you're actually dedicated to helping people, it's not about partisanship for me. I have a huge support in my North Miami community, which is predominantly African American, and they see me. I'm president. I go to all the churches. I'm at the schools. I'm on the streets. I do the work. I care. I want to make the difference, and I don't like that finger pointing creates, this divide when. We've got bad actors on either side of the aisle, but I want to know, who's front and center actually helping and delivering for people.
I lived in South Florida for a while, and I found that, communities of color kind of take a second stage in South Florida. I got the sense that was the case for the Haitian community. I got the sense that was the case for African Americans there as well. And there is a big issue with law enforcement, which I'm sure you're aware of. But I don't know, how do you bridge the gap? Because there's such a wealth divide in South Florida. I mean, some really wealthy communities and really poor communities. Look at West Palm and Palm Beach.
Sure,
two different worlds.
I represent 10 cities and 2 unincorporated entities of Miami-Dade, and I have lower income Hispanic, upper income Hispanic. Same with white, same with black, same with all diversities.
How do you bring those communities more into the process?
It's about education. It's about clearing a pathway for decent and honorable candidates that are actually running for office. Because right now, in the game of politics, it's all about getting people to be afraid of the other guy, vote against the other guy, vote against the other ideology, so they can just get your blocks of votes. And you got to study. They make the information really hard for people to get, and it's sickening. And people they deserve better. I mean, we take an oath when we get into these offices. Mm-hmm. We got to do better.
So, back to the original issue, you have communities in your district that cannot afford, because of a myriad of issues, are having trouble at the end of the day paying their rent or paying their mortgage. They sign a document with the county that a forgivable loan, so that, and then the county will rent out their backyards and put in FEMA trailers.
Basically.
Okay.
Mind
You have a problem with that. What's the option? What option have you offered?
Well,
what's the alternative?
So this
that you
particular city, right? It's a
Okay.
Democrat mayor, it's a Democrat city, and they're dependent on county funding, which a county funding is dependent on federal government. And what happens there, because the state is there to help, and there's money, there's a lot of money, but the difference is with our money in the state of Florida comes a lot of accountability and that transparency. Our money goes where we say it's going to go. But when you tap into federal funding, that's the drip. That's the faucet of money that never goes where it's supposed to go. And these politicians are lining the pockets of special interest groups. They're doling out favors, contracts, city contracts, and it's insane. You talk about law enforcement. I also represent Miami Beach, and you know about spring break. I mean, we're famous, right? Spring break, Miami Beach. Miami Beach is a magnificent community. And we have spring break where they target, so let me go back and explain our law enforcement measures. We've got 300 cops. We're supposed to have about 850. Nobody wants to work in Miami Beach because you've got groups like the NAACP, ACLU. These are groups that say all the things that they're supposed to say, but are they really protecting the communities that they say they're protecting? And they're revving up. We've got cops that are working Alpha Bravo, which are double shifts. They're working double shifts for 250 special event days of the year. They're exhausted. Then you've got cop agitators poking, jabbing, and you've got people with drones and cameras making clips, revving up communities and making it, but it's not about that. They want to create this chaos, and it's not about racism. It's that this community is being used in something called a program decline. They're running down businesses so that they can have, it's a land grab, and they've got outside development projects coming in to buy it all up on the cheap. They run it down, they run down the businesses, they run down the cost of the property value, and they're using African American communities to do it. I'm outraged.
Are there ways that perhaps your office can hold these developers and these land grabbers responsible? In other words, things that you can put into place, hurdles that make it harder for them to do those things.
So I invite everybody to just follow me on Instagram at Fabian Basabe, and just, get in touch with me, DM me, and I'll get you as much information, especially in the cities that I represent, so that you can be properly informed on who's who running to represent you. I think that's important. I mean, we've got one of the greatest abilities of making change in this nation, and we've got less people that vote in this country than work for the federal government. That's ridiculous.
What I'm still trying to understand is, if they don't sign the government, the county government's forgivable loan, so what is the alternative that you are offering so that they can remain in their homes?
They need to put pressure on the local municipalities, on their electeds, to work with the state, because we've got state money that'll invest in their infrastructure.
Okay.
We've got grant money that can go. We've got money to harden homes, $10,000 up to $10,000 per home. That's money that the state is investing, and that comes through appropriations. But these cities, that city in particular, they didn't put $1 of appropriations with my office because I'm the Republican, and that's how we fail people. Now with investing in our cities, we bring down costs.
So by withholding that money, then what I expect the answer to be is they're then going to blame you for the money not being distributed.
Oh, yeah. Like
and
the state doesn't invest, but I can't give you what you don't ask for.
Okay.
They've got something called an attestation form, which must be signed by their city manager and their mayor.
Attesting to what?
And in 2 years, it's just that they've asked me to represent them and lobby to get the money back from the state. And we're the richest district, highest donor district in the nation. And North Miami didn't put in for $1.
So is there any kind of public relations effort to let folks
It's
know?
not easy. I try to get local media to cover this, and I've got the Miami Herald and the Miami New Times, both very left-leaning, admittedly left-leaning. That's how they've been introduced to me by their own editorial boards.
But what about efforts by your own office? I mean, you got money.
Well, campaigns, campaigns are money. I'm self-funded. I invested $350,000 to get elected, and my social media campaigns, my message is out there. But you've got, I'm against the machine, the establishment. They're not working for people. They've forgotten people a long time ago, and I'm doing my part, and I invite others to do their part. Run for office. You don't need all that money to run for office if you just are willing to do the work. I also knocked on 18,000 doors, and there's no coincidence that that's how many votes I got.
Let's switch gears. You said you represent a very large Haitian population. What is the sense? What is the sentiment regarding the United States and its attempts to reinvade Haiti. Is that at the forefront of an issue in your community?
Very much so. And one of my favorite colleagues, who happens to be on the other side of the aisle, her name's Marie Woodson. She's a wonderful lady, a real class act. And she and I work together on many issues. And mostly making sure the people that we represent together see us working together. Because that's a big message to put. And she's brave to do so, because you don't walk around with the new guy that took the big money seat from the Dems. I'm a target for them. So, but yeah, I think what's going on in Haiti is very sad, it's very tragic, but it's also not new. And where's
That's
the,
why I
where's the
use the
United
word
Nations on this?
reinvade.
Where are our allies in support of what's going on? How are we allowing this? What are we doing as a nation, as a state? And we've taken strong stance, but we do what we can, we send what we can. At the same time, we've got to consider our state first. But we've established sister cities. We try to get them the information to help them understand that there is a difference, and they've got to take back control of their governments and be the change. But it's not easy. It's not easy.
To what extent, if any, do you have to fight this mentality, this anti-DeSantis mentality among neighborhoods of color?
I think because I've been so present and I've earned the respect and trust of a lot of the people in the community that they respect, not just the elected, but the community members, people at the churches, the people that own the businesses there. I've made major headways. I've got such strong support there, and I'm really proud, because it's not easy what I do, what any of us do.
Well, and especially in a state where you have a governor who is very anti-policy friendly toward communities of color.
Well, I mean, I've heard that, and that's kind of the marketing on him. But at the same time, he's the governor that also put African American studies to be required in our classrooms. He's the same governor, who signed the Tuskegee Airmen Day and all these other programs, investing money in all of our cities.
Wait a minute,
our
help me
collective
out.
communities.
Help me out, because I thought that DeSantis was working to remove programs from schools.
So the left is great at marketing and branding, and we as a Republican Party have to do a lot better on that. Getting the right information into the hands of people is not easy, and it's expensive, and that's where big campaigns come in. That is a flat out lie. Okay. Look up the bill. I'm a co-sponsor of it. We require African American studies in all classrooms in Florida.
But what about what's in those studies? I mean, DeSantis has talked about this.
We're not reinventing history. We can't. If we don't know where we came from, we don't know where we're going. And we are just requiring that factual, historical information is in there. And what's marketing now, just to rev people up and try to point fingers as if somehow, we don't consider it. It happens the same with the LGBTQ community. They're saying that Florida is bad for the LGBTQ community. Mind you, our numbers are record high of our LGBTQ tourism. And it's companies like Equality Florida, who are supposed to be protecting them, that are issuing false travel bans, hurting our businesses, hurting gay and lesbian businesses in Florida, because they'd rather rev up for fundraising purposes to, get their candidates elected. It should be criminal. It's certainly unethical.
I want to make sure we're historically correct here, because DeSantis's campaign before he dropped out of the race was clearly anti-woke, if you will. He was very clear about.
Didn't he coin that phrase?
So there's a lot of. I think what you're talking about is a lot of the DEI programs that they're taking out.
That also.
Of the
That's
schools.
part of it.
But I mean,
but he talked about classroom. He talked about prosecuting teachers,
right,
and who were teaching things in the classroom that violated the state policy.
Well,
and some of those were specifically.
He even talked about removing African American studies not only from the high school curriculum, he has even taken that as far as the college curriculum.
We've had a lot of issues with the school board and the college board, and that's because what they're implementing isn't something that has been voted on by the state and our school board, respecting state laws. So they're kind of making it up as they go, and they're throwing things in to throw curveballs to create animosity, to create these culture wars. It's just not true, and you can look it up. African American Studies was a bill that was signed into law by Governor DeSantis, and it is required in all of our classrooms.
Okay.
DEI is something different. I mean, there's always that argument of equity and equality. But I think it's talent to the front. I mean, look at sports. DEI doesn't work in sports.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned sports, because there were professional athletes with the NBA who were part of that original response to Governor DeSantis when he started this process. This became a huge part of his, I think, of the wave of anti-DeSantis sentiment among black folks.
Let me give you another example. We have African American days marked in calendar days of the year, right? And I remember we had Black History Month, and I was sitting on a committee, and one of my colleagues, wanted to remind everybody that it was Black History Month and all this stuff, and not one of them wanted to remind people that on that specific day, it actually was the day that Lincoln freed the slaves, or and that Republicans are part of a bigger movement that helped and have always supported African American communities.
Well,
and it's just and to omit that is just not fair. To create a narrative that the Democratic Party is for black communities and Republicans are not. When we're pro-business, we have excellent businesses of all diversity. We have, we're pro-free markets.
Well,
we give everybody a fair shot doing what's right and best for them and their families in this nation and in this state.
I want to take you in a different direction because we can talk a lot about
Yeah.
investment in communities and businesses and what's not being done in communities of color. But let me ask you this. On a looking ahead, considering the changes in the population demographic as we are now, last 10 years, 51% of the nation's growth has been in the Latino community. And in the next 10 to 15 years, minorities will be the collective majority. And I wonder if the GOP is looking forward to that, to look to a point where you're answering to voters who look more like us than your current voting population. Is that something on the horizon that you think about?
I just want educated voters, period.
But if you remove elements such as diversity, equality, and inclusion from us, you can't equate educating people to the NBA, or the NFL or Major League Baseball. In those competitive environments, yes, you do want, and the talented do rise to the top. You do put them on the floor. But when you're talking about education and the dissemination of information, you want people to have as much information as you can possibly put before them so that they have as realistic of an understanding of the history so that they then can understand the present. So equating education and sports to me isn't a fair comparison.
For me, the DEI programs are the antithesis of a free market, and I think that in that capacity, we are more likely to create a lowest common denominator than to help individuals grow.
Well, okay, we can debate history all day,
but also, what I love?
I want to say this: when you guys say free market, it wasn't free market in 1930, 40, and 50. It didn't become free market until you decided,
we as a nation have grown and we've come a long way.
We're going to let communities be a part of the process. And I think that's what we're talking about, is getting communities to be a bigger part of the process.
100%.
But I want to give you credit for getting elected in an area where you have a predominantly communities of color. You must be doing something right. Your message must be well said.
Thank you. We still live, especially in Florida, we live in a state and a nation where if you do the honest, hard work, you still get the results. And that's refreshing, right? And when you can just get into a process, and I'm new to the legislature, I'm new to politics. This is a whole new world for me. And you get into this and you think you're going to have to fight everybody because it's pretty disgusting. But when you see there's more good than bad, you remain hopeful. And I remain inspired, and I'm going to continue. And as long as the people have me serve them, I'm going to push forward and see that I can make the greatest impact possible.
Well, I'm going to take my boomer skepticism and say to a millennial, hey, you're looking at the future. You are the future, and we're going to look to you for good things.
Thank you, sir.
Fabian Basabe, Florida House of Representatives, representing Miami-Dade County. Thank you so much.
You.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it, man. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
It's such a pleasure to be with
Appreciate
you
it.
guys. Thank you.
And folks, you are still here with Politics in Color at politicsincolor.com. We're coming to you live from the Republican Convention, National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Stay with us. There's more.